That's another knife. This is the knife. What a gorgeous day to review a gorgeous knife. This vampire killer Bowie knife, designed by my friend Brother Nathaniel, arms and armor collector and designer. And this thing is massive. So this is the second knife that Brother Nathaniel sent me as a review sample. Exceedingly generous offer. I have always been a fan of Brother Nathaniel's work, the art of storytelling through arsenal design. And this thing is colossal, even in Bowie knife standards. It features a whopping 3.5-inch long blade with a 1-inch ricasso you see on some antique Bowie knives, but also a notch that typically found on Nepalese Khukuris, because this knife is forged by Purna Darnal of Nepal. I had some previous business dealing with Mr. Darnal, and I have been an admirer of his custom works. Equally long grip, made of horn with intricate carving, a roll spine as a nod to the large sigil designed by Brother Nathaniel. This is a most recent work. Although the previous knife Brother Nathaniel sent me, called the Centipede, was forged by Gurkha Armit, who was actually a bigger Bowie knife specialist, if you will, and Purna Darnal made mostly Nepalese Khukuris. However, he's very open to novelty design ideas. He has made a number of other type of blades, Greek, Ziphos, Copis, Falcatas, even some African swords that I designed. This one is definitely a monster compared to many antique Bowie knives. Overall size is 19.5 inches. Features a overly long grip with a curve that enables a very intuitive saber grip. And I think in this grip, you maximize the reach and leverage and make thrusting easier. This is like a pistol grip. So point alignment for thrusting is definitely easier. Feels a little bit like a bayonet on a rifle, right? And since the point of balance is quite close to the guard, about 1 inch, just above this notch, there's a bit of lack of authority in cuts. So if you choke down here, as you grip here, you feel a little bit more authority in the cut. Also, it can carry a greater tip speed, so it enables more powerful cuts for sure. Not to mention how easy it is to manipulate thrusts and stabs. So in a knife fight, you have significant advantage. In this grip, you probably have over 15-inch reach. So using thrust makes more sense, or wrist cut towards your opponent's wrist and hand to disable them. Overall, I'll say that this is a gorgeous design, very imposing and intimidating as a knife. A good choice for a sidearm if you expect to get into any sorts of physical confrontation. It's a backup for your primary weapon, or somewhat easy to carry option for a primary arm. Even I'll do some extensive testing for its cutting and thrusting capacity. Alright, pork ribs test. Standard issue Bowie by Brother Nathaniel. Let's see what it can do to this pork rib. As you can see, it's completely freestanding here, so there's no chopping block effect. I'll use all the fighting techniques / thrust. As you can see here, freestanding, fixed to the stand, and what they can do to it. 13.5-inch blade. Take a look. This is insane. Completely cut in half. Not only that, but also the cabbage got obliterated. Look at the gash, even under all this thick, meaty ribs with cartilage. Cuts through all this thick wrapping, but also through the cabbage. Massive gash. Oh my God. Look at this. Hey? That is just insane. It's all this. Look at this bone here. Look at it. And this is previously frozen. It's not completely fresh. Just look at it. The light chop and cut the cabbage almost completely through. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's completely through. Again, it's no challenge at all. Cutting through all this, completely shredded into pieces. Look at this, fore cartilage. There is just no resistance at all. Okay, penetrated one layer of meat, while into the next one, didn't manage to penetrate this one. Poke a tiny hole in it. This is a knife. Alright, check this out. Okay. The point comes out here. Check this out. All the way through. That's the point. Just penetrated 2 layers of meat. thickest part of the neck. Fluted. Okay, no damage. So after the cutting, what do I think of this Bowie knife? It is a beastly cutter for sure. I'm pretty sure the length and heft of this blade can help dishing out a lot of authoritative cutting. You can choke all the way down to just above the pommel to do these snap cuts, and that also increase the reach. Also, that would indirectly affect the tip speed. So the specific distal taper of this blade helps a lot with the mass distribution, makes it a very nimble sword. You have a lot of control with the tip. At the base of the blade, it's 6.5 millimeters thick, over a quarter inch, and then it tapers down to 5 millimeters at this clip point. From the clip point, it tapers down to under 3 millimeters near the tip. So with the tapering on the top half of the blade, it's quite lively. The shape of the grip also helps a lot with a deep curve in the grip, enables a pistol grip. So help with both cut and thrust. The profile is analogous to some Anglo-Saxon broken back sacks. There is some clear parallel between the Bowie knife and this Renaissance German Grossmesser as well, being the clip point and sharpened false edge. Probably has some similarity to the German barnware, with a clip point over here and a false edge. So this will ensure the tip is aligned with the direction of the thrust more easily. However, this tip has a upswept curve, it's a kick up. Is not entirely pointy compared to some of the other knives, particularly the Centipede that Brother Nathaniel also sent me earlier and I reviewed. That one has an exceedingly pointy tip, which makes it a lot easier to penetrate material. This one isn't exactly spatulate, and I'm pretty sure it can dish out enough penetration through soft material like clothing, flesh. That's not a problem. You can see during the test cutting, if I put my skeletal strength behind it, do a ice pick grip, and stab all the way down, there's no resistance at all. It will just keep going all the way through. This is a robust tip, unlikely to bend or break.
It's kind of a trade-off between penetrative capacity and durability. The blade has a nice V section of a bevel, flat grind from this shoulder here all the way to the tip. I enjoy the full flat ground from the spine to the tip a lot on knives, especially when you have a very even mirror polish. Looks really classy, and also optimize the bevel angle. But this is also very nice because the entire blade is rather broad. It's over 2 inches wide at its broadest, near the clip point. So you have about 1.5 inches depth here as the primary bevel, and there's no secondary bevel to speak of, not even a micro bevel. All blends in very well. Has some slight amount of not even apple seed, I would say, just some niku. If you are familiar with Japanese sword terms, a little bit of muscle, convex geometry slightly, but mostly this is a flat ground blade. And the false edge is rather long. You have 6 inches of false edge. This is not razor sharp, and the bevel is shorter, so the angle is of course stout, okay, but it's still sharpened enough to do some damage with the flip of the wrist. You can do these snap cut with the false edge, and also it makes thrusting a little bit easier, penetration. Once the tip goes into the target, it can create a large wound and more likely to open veins, arteries, cause some profuse bleeding. This C guard is very robust. You can see some grinding mark on that, so gives a little bit of handmade appeal. It's not completely symmetrical, but I don't mind it. It's heat blued, not very even, but has a rustic appeal. Also, these parts, this upswept quillum, can potentially catch a blade if you do a bind with another blade. If it glides all the way down, it can fall into this trap here, and it's hard to get out, so you can manipulate your opponent's blade, which is very useful. Of course, it doesn't provide as much hand protection as sabers, otherwise this knife will be overly chunky and heavy, so there's enough hand protection, of course. And I like this cross on this Khukuri style notch instead of the usual Shiva style notch. Brother Nathaniel designed this cross over here. It's not completely symmetrical, but I don't mind it. It's hand carved, of course. So are these vines, rose vines on the horn grip. This grip is polished to be rather slick, but with these vine patterns, there's enough texture to provide enough traction, so it's not overly slippery when it gets wet. There's this ball pommel, spherical pommel, and you can see the pin here, slightly rough, but otherwise it doesn't stand out. It's filed mostly flush with the pommel, and it provides some adequate counterweight to this hefty blade. Overall, it's 1 pound 12 ounces, so I'd say it's very tamed, because even though the bevel starts at the shoulder, if you look at the cross section here, you can see there's some concave geometry in this part between the shoulder and the spine, so it reduces the weight, and it also adds some geometry to the blade. It's nice to look at. So this is rather large for even a Bowie knife, and historically Bowie knives are around 8 to 10 inches. It's said that Bowie knives were originated in Spanish hunting knives. As we all know, James Bowie, the frontiersman that popularized Bowie knife, enjoyed oversized broad blades, so during his lifetime he commissioned quite a few Bowie knives. One of the most infamous knives he owned was involved in the deadly Sandbar Brawl in 1827, when James Bowie accompanied Samuel Wells to a duel against Thomas Maddox, each of whom brought an entourage of 5 friends. Nobody managed to land a shot in the duel, so it was supposed to be resolved with a reconciliation and celebration of survival. It, however, turned into a deadly brawl. Colonel Crane shot and killed General Khukuri, but also accidentally shot James Bowie in the hip. Bowie then drew his knife to fight, but was knocked out by Crane with a whip of his pistol's butt. He was then shot at and stabbed in the chest by Major Norris Wright with his sword cane, which was stopped by James Bowie's sternum. Bowie then used the opportunity to grapple Wright and pull him down to the point of his knife, killing him. Several other combatants died, but James Bowie managed to survive with severe injury. Interestingly enough, Colonel Crane helped carry Bowie out, despite having just fought him, much to Bowie's surprise. Afterwards, this incident was highly publicized in national newspapers, which earned Bowie and his knife the widespread notoriety. James and his brother Resin Bowie received many requests for large knives of this design, and they commissioned some more ornate designs from reputed bladesmiths of the early 19th century. This had lasted until James Bowie's death at Alamo, when 150 Texan defenders made a last stand against thousands of Mexican attackers and fought to the last man. James Bowie himself reportedly killed multiple assailants with his big knife before being stabbed to death by bayonets. The Bowie knife became a patriotic symbol of the United States, especially in the South. I was watching Matt Eason of Scholar Gladiatoria reading a late 19th century article from the newspaper Baltimore Herald, where the author analogized the meaning of the Bowie knife to Americans to the symbolism of the gladius to Romans. Yeah, you can make that argument, as both the Bowie knife and the gladius are short blades optimized for stabbing, but also competent in cutting. They were both used in war, as James Bowie himself took the knife to his grave at the Battle of Alamo. But both blades can also be carried in civilian life for self-defense, especially in the early 19th century when firearms, pistols were mostly single shot. So even if you have an advantage at range, it's only one shot, you still have to use sabers, sword canes, knives to defend yourself. Have an oversized knife definitely helps. So that's why in the 80s classic Crocodile Dundee, he had an oversized Bowie knife as well on him, and that's where the infamous "that's not a knife, this is a knife" scene came from.
And your wallet.
Nick, give him your wallet.
What for?
He's got a knife.
That's not a knife. That's a knife.
Knife fight, if you have an oversized knife, that's definitely intimidating. I'm not a knife enthusiast by and large, mostly a historical sword guy, but I'm very interested in the historical origin of Bowie knives. I have some EDC knives, folders, and the largest one in my collection, or even on the production market, is the Cold Steel Espada XL. It's rather large, as you can see. The overall size is almost comparable to this Bowie knife. Still a lot shorter. If you choke all the way down, obviously you get a lot more reach. However, there's a lot less cutting edge. This Bowie knife has exactly twice the length of the cutting edge on this Espada XL. If your opponent has a folder and you have one of these to defend yourself, in a self-defense situation, you have definitely an edge over anyone wielding a knife, of course, not to mention other improvised weapons like clubs, bats, or axes. You will have an edge because this is closer to a dedicated weapon, especially effective in civilian context. With the cutting capacity and the thrusting capability, this is a very worthy contender for, you would say, a clandestine operative, like the Seekers in Brother Nathaniel's fictional organization, the Lodge. They are a group of monster hunters in his alternate universe. So Brother Nathaniel invented this fantastic franchise where our reality and supernatural entities from fantasies converge through interdimensional portals, much like the Witcher franchise, where the enforcers or the operatives of this organization called the Lodge have to actively go out to seek out the bloodsuckers like vampires or beasts like werewolves, trolls, to destroy them and protect the innocent. My wife has done these concept art for him to illustrate his idea of Seekers. Some of the prominent one, like Sir Reynard, who is a skilled knight. This is a good option for a sidearm or even a tertiary weapon for these operatives. You have a lot of options. If you want to choke all the way to the Quillons, you can have some very reliable stabbing or chopping capability in close quarter combat, but you can also use some saber techniques, which is prescribed to the usage of Bowie knives in the 19th century. You stand a chance against even longer weapons like sword canes. Probably not an advantage over a saber, of course, or a small sword, but against sword canes or machetes, yeah, this is a pretty good option where you have added hand protection, but also very fearsome cutting ability and thrusting capability. Brother Nathaniel is a Bowie knife aficionado himself, who has dozens of Bowie knives from different makers, and also designed more than a dozen custom Bowie knives. This is a rather large and hefty example, but not the largest. He has one larger Bowie knife that has very intricate decoration on that, but also a lot larger than even this one. That one is closer to 2 feet long. Can you imagine that? And 2.5 pounds. But this one is good enough for any regular blade user, so it's still not too heavy to carry. With this nice scabbard, wood core, and nice leather wrap. It's got sheets in there nicely because the ricasso is nice and thick with the distal tapering. Comes in there. Retention is perfect. There's no rattle of any sort, so it's completely silent. But also it doesn't come out even if you shake. There's tiny bit of gap here because of the C guard, but it doesn't bother me. And the draw is very smooth. Also quite silent, so it wouldn't draw any attention.
The tension is pretty good. It wouldn't fall out. Zero rattling. So a sign of very good fit for a scabbard.
It has some decorative patterns impression on the leather, as you can see here, vaguely. Also has a steel shape with the large sigil engraved onto that. There's a copper inlay, the cross with 2 full moons, and another one in the center. Very nice. Here we have 6 brass pins to secure the loop, carry it on your belt. The pommel, spherical pommel, is not an issue when you carry it. It wouldn't latch onto your clothing or anything. It's still a size plausible for concealed carry. With a scabbard over 2 pounds in weight, it's pretty significant for you to carry around, but it really just increase your confidence in any encounter, obviously. extraordinary design, a very generous gift from Brother Nathaniel. If you are interested in his work on this fictional universe, or arms and armor design in general, please watch my review of the Centipede knife that he designed. If you are interested in this design, you can contact Brother Nathaniel, who will commission this knife for you with Purnal Darnal. The price is around $225 to $250, so that's more than reasonable with a Bowie knife this long and well made, well designed. If you have any other design ideas, you can discuss with Brother Nathaniel. He does dozens of design for arms and armor, warhammers, maces, swords, longswords, kriegsmesser, push daggers, katar, you name it. But of course, his favorite is the Bowie knife. If you have any specific requirement or ideas, feel free to discuss with him. He can come up with practical designs that will be completely functional. So there you go. The large standard issue Bowie knife by Brother Nathaniel. Over half a meter long. A monster for sure. If you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe.